My mother called me family trash at Christmas while 21 people watched. My dad said, "Let it go." I chose silence, a suitcase, and the last flight out. Dad remarked, "You're overreacting." My mother responded, "Goodbye." I didn't say anything. Some things do not require words, they require action. They are now begging, "Hey Reddit." So my mother called me trash during Christmas dinner in front of 21 family members. Not in a funny or light-hearted roasting style. She stared me dead in the eyes and described me as the family letdown, the trash who got fortunate. My golden child brother sat there, grinning as if he had won a prize. She expected me to shrug it off, as I always did. Take the hit, grin through it, and maintain the peace. But something snapped in me that evening. For the first time in 33 years, I selected myself. Let me back up a bit since this narrative requires context. I'm Ethan Parker, 33 years old, and the eldest of 2 kids. Logan Walker, my younger brother, is 29, and he has been the focus of my parents' existence from birth. I am not being theatrical here. This isn't some sibling rivalry crap in which I'm upset because he received a larger slice of cake at a birthday celebration once. This is decades of systemic bias that would make any documentary filmmaker cry. Growing up in our house in Ohio was like living in 2 distinct worlds. Logan Walker lived in a universe in which he was applauded for breathing, congratulated for living, and coddled through every single failure as if he were a delicate work of art. Then there was my reality, where nothing I accomplished was ever satisfactory. Every accomplishment was reduced, and I was essentially viewed as a family utility player who existed to make Logan Walker appear better. When I was 17, I worked part-time at a grocery shop to save up for a second-hand automobile. It took me 20 months of stocking shelves and dealing with entitled consumers to save $3,500. My parents contributed precisely nil. They said it would improve character. You know what happened when Logan Walker turned 17? They purchased him a fresh new Mustang. Cash. No questions were asked. When I pointed out the obvious injustice, my mother genuinely spoke the words that still echo in my ears today. She claimed Logan Walker was unique. Logan Walker needs additional help. Logan Walker was unique. Special. That word tormented me throughout my childhood. Every accomplishment I made was expected. Logan Walker's accomplishments were always celebrated as miracles. I completed high school with a 3.8 GPA and worked 30 hours a week. Logan Walker nearly graduated with a 2.3 despite receiving tutoring from 3 separate tutors whom my parents paid for privately. Guess who received the graduation party for 60 guests and catered cuisine? Hint. It wasn't me. I got through college on scholarships and work-study programs. I studied finance because I was strong with numbers and desired stability, something my family never provided. I finished with honors in 4.5 years, despite working practically full-time. Logan Walker dropped out after 4 semesters because college was not for him. My parents paid out his $32,000 in college loans anyhow. They claimed he needed a fresh start. Meanwhile, I'm drowning in school debt since I was supposed to sort it all out on my own. Character development and all that. When I asked my parents if they could help with any portion of my loans in the same manner they helped Logan Walker, my mother scoffed. She stated that I was completely capable of managing things on my own. She stated that Logan Walker required further assistance since his life was becoming increasingly difficult. It's more difficult for the child who has never had a job, suffered academically without professional tutors, or had to worry about whether he can pay textbooks. The double standard was so obvious that it would be amusing if it weren't my real life. One Thanksgiving during my junior year, I returned home concerned about exams and my part-time job schedule. I remarked that I was working additional shifts to pay the rent, and my mother glared at me as if I had said something terrible. She advised me to prioritize my family over my financial situation. This was the same woman who had just sent Logan Walker a $2,500 check for a road trip with his pals. The same woman who never asked me how I was doing financially, or if I needed anything. After college, I relocated to Arizona to pursue a job as an entry-level analyst at an investing business. Nothing fancy. My family believed I was wasting my ability by not staying close to home, like Logan Walker did. For years, I grinded. I'm talking 12-hour days, weekend work, and always proving myself. Nobody ever handed me anything, so I had to work my way up the ladder. Logan Walker changed employment many times throughout this period. Retail, restaurant jobs, and a brief stint as a personal trainer of around 4 months. My parents sponsored his rent every month, they purchased him food, They co-signed for his flat when his credit was too bad for him to get a loan. They even purchased him a new automobile when the Mustang eventually broke down after years of neglect. But here's where things began to change. By the age of 31, I'd advanced to the position of senior portfolio manager. I was responsible for accounts worth millions. I was making more than both of my parents together. The family dynamic began to shift abruptly. My mother would make these tiny remarks whenever I visited. Things like wondering if I really needed such a wonderful place, questioning whether my career was steady enough, or advising that I was working too hard and should slow down like Logan Walker, who had discovered peace and simplicity. Peace and simplicity. That's what she dubbed her grown son, who lives off their retirement funds while delivering meals part-time and plays video games for 16 hours a day. Logan Walker never said anything openly, but I could feel the animosity pouring from him every time I returned home. When I mentioned employment, he became silent. When I explained my life in Arizona, I received eye rolls. The statements about how some individuals are simply lucky, while others have to work. Coming from someone who had had everything handed to him his whole life, the boldness was almost admirable. I struggled for years to preserve the peace. I actually did. When my parents expressed concern about their costs, I sent money home. I gave Logan Walker birthday gifts that he never acknowledged. I traveled home for every major holiday, even if it meant taking vacation days that I might have spent resting. I did everything a good son and brother should do. And none of it mattered because in their view, I was always the tough one who left, the cold one who prioritized profession above family, the one who needed to be pushed down a few pegs. Which takes us to last Christmas, the holiday that altered everything. My firm had recently completed a large transaction which I had led. We're talking about the largest purchase in the company's history. My bonus alone was more than my father earned in 2 years. I was not going to boast about it, since that is not who I am. But I felt proud. For the first time in my life, I felt like I'd made it. It seemed as if all of the years of hard work and sacrifice had finally paid off. I flew home for Christmas with genuine optimism in my heart. I realized this is stupid, but I figured this year would be different. Perhaps they'd finally notice me. Perhaps they'd finally admit that their oldest son had built something real. My parents had invited the entire extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandparents. 21 guests jammed into their tiny home for Christmas supper. The home was decked out like a holiday magazine, and my mother had been cooking for 4 days straight. Everything appeared wonderful from the outside. Logan Walker was there, as usual, conducting court in the living room. He had a new girlfriend, Madison Reed, who appeared pleasant enough. She was a dental hygienist who obviously had no idea what she was getting into with my family. Logan Walker was narrating a story about his new work opportunity, which turned out to be an MLM he'd recently joined. My parents were nodding, as if he had just claimed he had cured cancer. When I stepped in, the reaction was lukewarm, at best. A couple short embraces and customary questions about my flight. Then everyone returned to Logan Walker and Madison Reed, and the incredible business opportunity that was not a pyramid scam. Within 10 minutes of my arrival, I found myself standing alone at the appetizer table. Christmas supper began at about 6:30 p.m. My mother had surpassed herself with the spread: turkey, ham, all the sides, and several desserts. We all huddled around the long dining table which barely fit in the room. I landed there sandwiched between my Aunt Linda Harper and my cousin's husband, whom I had only seen twice. The seating arrangement felt deliberate. Logan Walker was seated in the center of the table, directly between my parents, like if a throne had been saved for him. Madison Reed sat next to him, clearly fascinated by everything, perhaps because she didn't know any better. The discussion flowed as it often did at these events, catching up, asking about kids, grumbling about the weather, politics, and gas costs. Logan Walker dominated the majority of the conversation, talking about his new business endeavor as if he were already a billionaire. My father continued nodding heartily, mentioning how Logan Walker had finally discovered his purpose. My mother grinned at him as if he were announcing a Nobel Prize rather than a clear pyramid scam. Nobody asked me much of anything. It's just normal. I mainly listened and ate, which was good. I'd stopped expecting attention at family gatherings years ago. Growing up as an afterthought teaches you to shrink yourself. Then, bless her heart, my grandma decided to include me in the discourse. She inquired about how work was doing. A simple query, harmless enough. I responded modestly, saying how things were going well, how we had a terrific year, and how glad I was for the opportunity I had. I was not boasting, I was not bragging. I was just addressing a direct inquiry from my 84-year-old grandma, who was genuinely curious about my life. That is when my mother decided to intervene. She chuckled a frigid, theatrical laugh and uttered something that made the entire table go quiet. She thought it was humorous that the family trash ended up trying to be successful. She stated I must have deceived a lot of people to reach where I am since it wasn't skill or hard work. She said Logan Walker was the one with true talent and I was simply lucky because I was ready to forsake my family for money. 21 people heard my mother refer to me as garbage, a fraud, and reject all I did as chance and dishonesty. My grandma seemed humiliated. Some of my relatives shuffled nervously in their seats. My father looked at his plate as if it were the most exciting thing in the world. Logan Walker grinned, the small smirk that indicated he had won. That being stated, no matter how much I did, our mother would always regard me as inferior to him. For a brief time I felt the old temptation to smooth things over, to laugh it off, to tell a self-deprecating joke that would relieve the tension and allow everyone to pretend nothing had occurred. That's what I've done my entire life. Take a hit. Keep the peace. Protect others' comfort at the price of my own dignity. However, something was different this time. Perhaps it was due to years of accumulated disrespect. Perhaps it was the fact that I had just accomplished something very substantial, and it still wasn't sufficient. Perhaps it was witnessing Logan Walker's smile too often. Whatever it was, something inside me turned frigid. Nor furious, nor sad. Simply chilly. Like a switch flicked, I was able to see everything clearly for the first time. I did not say anything. I just put down my fork, rose up from the table, and walked upstairs to the guest room, where my suitcase was. I could hear the puzzled murmuring beginning under me. My mother called out, wondering where I was going. Her voice was already moving to the defensive tone she employed when she realized she'd crossed a boundary but refused to accept it. I packed my luggage attentively. Clothes, toiletries, the book I had packed for the travel, and chargers. Everything was placed back into the suitcase with slow, careful motions. No haste, no theatrical gestures, simply a man gathering his possessions. By the time I returned downstairs with my luggage, half the table had stood up. My father stopped me in the corridor, his expression a mix of shame and irritation. He informed me that I was overreacting. He stated my mother didn't intend it that way. He said I was being theatrical and spoiling Christmas for everyone. I gazed at him for a long time. This man had seen his wife tear me down for 33 years and never intervened. This man has sponsored my brother's shortcomings while leaving me to battle alone. This individual was now claiming that my reaction to being publicly humiliated was the issue. I did not argue. I did not explain. I just walked by him to the front door. My mother was standing there, arms crossed, her countenance a strange mix of fury and what may have been dread. She told me that if I went out the door, I was making a decision. She claimed I was showing everyone who I truly was. She said farewell, as if it were a threat, expecting me to tremble at the thought of losing her approval. I paused at the door. I gazed at her. Logan Walker stood behind her smirking. I looked at my father, who was already shaking his head as if I were a disappointment. I looked about at the family members gathered in the living room, watching the events unfold as if it were reality television. And I said nothing since certain things do not require words, they require action. I opened the door, stepped outside, got into my rental car, and drove to the airport. I rescheduled my flight to the next available departure, and, by 11:45 p.m. on Christmas night, I was 35,000 feet in the air returning to Arizona. My phone blew up the entire time. My mother sent me texts ranging from wrath to guilt trip to false concern. Messages from my father instructing me not to be childish. Logan Walker sent a single text that simply stated, "Nice tantrum, bro." I read every single one. Then I turned off my phone and requested a ginger ale from the flight attendant. For the first time in my life, I felt liberated. The weeks after Christmas were fascinating. I returned to work. I stayed focused on my task. I pounded the gym harder than I had in years. I reunited with people I had neglected. I did everything they suggest you should do when dealing with a difficult situation. But I never reached out to my relatives. My mother's communications developed during the first several weeks. The first rage gave way to guilt trips. The guilt trips gave way to passive-aggressive remarks about how she hoped I was content wrecking the family. After then, there was roughly a week of stillness. The quiet gave way to timid olive branches that weren't actually olive branches at all. Messages asking whether I was all right, but with the implication that I should apologize for overreacting. My father texted me precisely twice. Someone once told me that my mother was really unhappy and that I should call her. He once told me that he hoped I realized what I was doing by cutting off my family. Both communications made it plain that he regarded me as the problem, as if my reaction to being publicly humiliated was worse than the humiliation itself. Logan Walker did not respond after the initial text, which was honestly tracked. Why should he? His place in the family hierarchy remained stable. If anything, my absence likely made him feel more validated. I didn't react to any of them, not because I was being petty or playing a game, but because I honestly didn't have anything to say. What was there to discuss? My mother called me garbage in front of 21 people, expecting me to laugh. My father informed me that I was overreacting. My brother grinned as if he had won some competition I had no idea we were participating. These were not individuals who misinterpreted me. These were folks who knew exactly who I was, yet decided to belittle me regardless. The stillness continued during January, and then February. By March I'd gone 4 months without conversing with any of my close family members. It was the longest I'd ever gone, and it was the most serene I'd felt in years. I spent those months finding myself outside of my family's shadow. Turns out, I liked myself more when I wasn't continually compared to Logan Walker, or made to feel like an outcast in my own family. I rekindled activities I had abandoned years before, began reading for pleasure again, and began hiking since Arizona has some wonderful trails, and I now had the mental energy to appreciate them. I even started cooking more, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. When I was devoting all of my focus to work and dealing with family problems, the tranquility was transforming. I slept better. I laughed harder. I got rid of the persistent knot in my stomach that I had been carrying about for so long. I forgot what it was like not to have it. I realized how much time I had spent in survival mode. I was always bracing myself for the next critique, comparison, or reminder that no matter what I did, I would never measure up. Around February, my extended family started reaching out. My grandma phoned to check on me, and I responded since she had never been involved in the situation. She told me she was proud of me, she understood why I left, and she had confronted my mother after I walked out. Apparently, half the family believed my mother had crossed a limit. The other half said I should simply get over it. That kind of family relations is enjoyable. My Aunt Linda Harper, who I had sat next to during dinner, sent me a lengthy email apologizing for not saying anything at the moment. She claimed to have frozen in horror after hearing what my mother had said. She stated she'd always seen how differently I was treated and regretted not speaking out. It meant something to hear that, knowing that at least some individuals had taken note. However, the folks who really needed to reach out: my mother, my father, and Logan Walker. Radio silence that meant something. Not the quiet of meditation or regret. The quiet while waiting for me to blink first. Waiting for me to cave and crawl back, like I always had. Work continued to go smoothly. Actually, things went really well. Without the emotional strain of dealing with my family's turmoil, I had more energy to focus, clarity, and motivation. In April, I was elevated again to vice president of our regional division. I was 33 years old, led a staff of 45 individuals, and managed portfolios worth more than $400 million. I purchased a home in May. Nothing insane, but pleasant. 3 bedrooms, and a pool in a nice area with a community. I got a shelter dog, Cooper, a 2-year-old German Shepherd mix who quickly became my greatest buddy. I began dating someone I had met through a mutual acquaintance. Claire Bennett was an architect with no sympathy for family turmoil, having cut off her own poisonous parents years before. We understood each other in ways that were unusual. Life, for lack of a better term, was nice. This is actually good. Not the performative good I used to offer to uninterested family members. Genuinely and truly good. And then June occurred. My grandma informed me that Logan Walker's multi-level marketing business had failed. It's shocking, I know. The business proposition turned out to be a predatory scam, which failed when federal officials intervened. Logan Walker had not only lost all of his money, but he had also persuaded numerous family friends to join, prompting various people to threaten him with legal action. But it was not the finest part. Logan Walker had allegedly been living far above his means for months, hoping that the MLM money would finally start coming. He had maxed up his credit cards, not paid his rent, and taken out loans against almost anything he could leverage. When everything fell, he had nothing, or almost nothing. He was in debt for roughly $68,000, had no genuine career prospects, and was known in our area as the person who duped others into a pyramid fraud. My parents, who had been supporting his lifestyle for years, were suddenly confronted with a decision. Bail him out again and deplete what was left of their retirement funds, or let him face the consequences of his own actions for the first time. They attempted to bail him out. Of course they did, but this time the hole was too deep. They paid off some of the more pressing creditors, funded his rent for a few months, and then reached a snag. My father was compelled to come out of retirement and work part-time at a hardware shop. My mother started doing bookkeeping from home for small companies. At their ages, they were working hard to keep Logan Walker afloat. Meanwhile, Logan Walker came back into their home since he couldn't afford to live on his own. The golden child, nearly 32 years old, was back in his childhood bedroom, with his parents attempting to justify his failures. I heard all of this secondhand from my grandmother, Aunt Linda Harper, and the family grapevine, which somehow kept me in the loop despite the fact that I hadn't spoken to my parents in 7 months. I'm not going to pretend that hearing about Logan Walker's downfall didn't give me some satisfaction. I am human. After 33 years of watching him fail upward while I clawed for every inch, seeing reality finally catch up with him felt like poetic justice. But I didn't feel the need to brag. I didn't contact you to say I told you so. I didn't intervene in their crisis. I just kept living my life, advancing my career, spending time with Claire Bennett and Cooper, and enjoying the peace I had worked so hard to achieve. Then the messages began. My mother contacted me first, not with an apology or acknowledgement of what she had said at Christmas, but with a request. She asked if I could help them financially, just temporarily, until they got back on their feet. She explained that family helps family. She said she knew our relationship had been difficult, but I wouldn't abandon them when they needed me the most. The audacity was almost impressive. This woman had called me trash 7 months ago, had never apologized or admitted that she had done anything wrong, and now she was asking for money because her golden child's failures had finally caught up with everyone. I did not react. A week later, my father contacted me with essentially the same request, but in slightly different language. He discussed how difficult things had been, how they had never expected to be in this situation, and how a family was supposed to stick together through thick and thin. He mentioned my success several times, emphasizing their pride in what I had accomplished. It's funny how that pride only came out when they needed something from me. I did not respond to that either. Logan Walker eventually reached out. That one really surprised me. His message was shorter than our parents' attempts, less pleading, and more entitled. He said he understood our differences, but I was still his brother. He said he was going through a difficult time and could use some help. He promised to pay me back once he got back on his feet. He even made a comment about how I had always been the smart one, and that he was simply trying to learn from my success. I read the message 3 times, looking for any sign of genuine remorse, an acknowledgement of the years of mistreatment, or an indication that he understood why I had walked away. There was nothing but a golden child expecting the universe to provide for him once more. This time through his brother, whom he had looked down on for 33 years. I did not respond to that one either. By August, my family was becoming increasingly frustrated with my radio silence. I know this because my grandmother told me, and the messages progressed from requests to demands to outright guilt trips. My mother sent me a message calling me selfish, saying she couldn't believe she raised someone so heartless, and accusing me of abandoning my family in their time of need, when they had always been there for me. That last line nearly made me laugh aloud. Always been there for me. In which alternate reality? My father tried a different approach. He sent me a long message about how disappointed he was with the man I had become, how success had changed me, and how he remembered me as a little boy who valued family above all else. He expressed his hope that I would find my way back to who I truly was before it became too late. Logan Walker's messages became more aggressive. He called me a sellout. I stated that I believed I was superior to everyone else. I claimed I had always been envious of him, and that this was my way of finally exacting revenge. The projection was almost too accurate. I remained silent throughout it all. Not because I was playing a game or attempting to manipulate anyone, but because I had truly moved on. Their disarray was not my responsibility. Their financial problems were not my concern. Their emotional needs were not mine to manage. Then my mother showed up at my house. I'm not sure how she got my address. Probably from one of my extended family members, whom I trusted to respect my boundaries. I returned home from work on a Tuesday evening to find her sitting on my front porch, looking older and more tired than I remembered. Cooper was going crazy inside, so I took a moment to collect myself before approaching. It was the first time I'd seen her in person since Christmas. After nearly 9 months of silence, she showed up unexpectedly on my doorstep. She stood up when she saw me approaching. There were tears in her eyes. She started talking before I even got to the porch. Words came out about how sorry she was. How she didn't mean what she said over Christmas. How she was simply stressed and took it out on me. How she had always loved me, even if she did not express it properly. I let her talk. I stood on my own walkway, keys in hand, and let her get it all out. Apologies, excuses, justifications, tears, and pleas. She discussed how difficult things had been since I left. How my absence had left a hole in the family. She lay awake at night, wondering where she had gone wrong. How she had no idea how much her words could hurt, until she saw me walk out the door on Christmas. It was an exceptional performance. If I hadn't witnessed her behavior for 33 years, I might have believed it. But I knew my mother. I knew how she worked. And I knew she usually cried before making a request. When she finally stopped, I asked her a single question. I asked her why she was actually here. The tears stopped almost instantly. Her expression changed, and there it was. The actual cause: they needed money. Logan Walker's condition had worsened. There were legal issues now, including potential lawsuits from people he had recruited into the MLM. They were on the verge of financial ruin, and they needed my help to avoid it. I nodded slowly. I told her that I understood. I thanked her for coming all this way. Then I told her no. Not angry, not vindictive, but simply honest. I stated that I would not bail out Logan Walker or fund an unaffordable lifestyle. I told them that if they needed financial advice, I could recommend some professionals who could help them restructure their debts. But I wasn't going to write a check to solve their problems. She tried arguing, pleading, and guilting. She discussed everything she could think of. How she carried me for 10 months. How she made sacrifices for me when I was younger. Family was supposed to mean something. I asked her what family meant when she referred to me as trash in front of everyone. What family meant when she spent 33 years favoring Logan Walker while I had to earn everything myself. What family meant was that she never acknowledged my accomplishments unless she needed something from me. She had no answers, just more tears, deflection, and attempts to make me feel guilty for setting boundaries. I told her she could stay at a hotel in town if she needed to rest before traveling back. I offered to pay for one night as a courtesy, but I made it clear that she was not staying at my house and that no amount of showing up unexpectedly would change my mind. She left without accepting the hotel offer. I felt nothing as I watched her rental car drive away down my street. No guilt, no sadness, no second guessing, just a calm certainty that I had made the right decision. The months following my mother's visit were interesting. The family division became permanent. Those who supported my decision maintained contact with me. Those who thought I was cruel eventually stopped reaching out. And to be honest, I was fine with both outcomes. My parents continued to struggle. They sold their house and moved to a smaller apartment. My father's part-time job became full-time. My mother's bookkeeping work expanded. For the first time in their lives, they had to deal with actual financial consequences. Logan Walker bounced around for a while, couch surfing with friends and working short-term jobs. Madison Reed dumped him around July, when it became clear that his business opportunity was a financial disaster. Last I heard, he was working in a warehouse, possibly for the first time. Did I feel sorry for them? In some abstract way, they might still be my biological family. I didn't want them to suffer, but I also wasn't willing to give up my own well-being to save them from the consequences of their own actions. Claire Bennett and I became engaged in November. Cooper was the ring bearer at our engagement party, which was just as cute as it sounds. We purchased a larger house together. I began talking about kids and created a life that felt genuinely fulfilling in ways I had never experienced growing up. The engagement party was ideal. Just 36 people genuinely cared about us. Friends from work, Claire Bennett's family, who treated me like a son, and a few of my cousins who reached out after Christmas. There is no drama, no hidden agendas, and no one is trying to diminish anyone else. Just a genuine celebration of two people who have found each other. Claire Bennett's parents had flown in from Oregon for the occasion. Her father approached me at one point and expressed his happiness that his daughter had found someone who understood the value of boundaries. He was aware of my situation because Claire Bennett had informed them, and rather than judging me for cutting off family, they respected me for it. It was the first time I had felt supported by my in-laws. The contrast with my own family was striking. We spent the winter planning our future. It's not just the wedding, everything. We discussed where we wanted to live long term, how many children we wanted, and the type of life we wanted to build. These conversations with Claire Bennett felt natural because neither of us had the baggage of trying to please people who would never be satisfied. We were creating something new and unique, free of generational dysfunction. In February of the following year, my grandmother died peacefully while sleeping. At 85 years old, I flew back to Ohio for the funeral. It was the first time I'd seen my parents or Logan Walker in over a year. The funeral was awkward, as one would expect. My mother tried to hug me as if nothing had happened. I accepted the hug briefly before taking a step back. My father nodded at me from across the room. Logan Walker avoided all eye contact. We were strangers who happened to share DNA, and everyone in the funeral home sensed it. My mother pulled me aside after the service. She appeared genuinely older, more tired, and defeated. She explained that she had been thinking a lot about everything. She said she understood why I was pulling away. She stated that she wished things had been different. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was closer than anything I'd received before. I told her I appreciated it. I told her I hoped they were doing well. I told her that I did not hate her, her father, or Logan Walker. I simply couldn't be a part of a family that didn't respect me. She cried. This time there were real tears. Not the manipulative kind from her trip to Arizona. She asked if there was any way we could start over and rebuild what had been broken. I thought about it. Really thought about it. This was not a snap decision. Since walking out that Christmas night, I'd imagined this moment 1,000 times. Rebuilding would necessitate acknowledgement, genuine acknowledgement of favoritism. Real recognition of the harm it caused. Real acknowledgement that I had been treated as inferior my entire life. Not just words meant to entice me to write a check. Actual understanding of the harm done. Informed her that. I told her that if she and Dad ever wanted to work on genuinely rebuilding our relationship, I would be willing to do so. However, that work had to come from them. I wasn't going to coach them through it, take half measures, or pretend everything was fine just for the sake of family unity. She nodded. Said she understood. Said she'd talk to my father about it. That was 16 months ago. I received a letter from my mother last month. An actual handwritten letter, which she used to send when I was in college before our relationship deteriorated. It was 6 pages long. She relived specific memories from my childhood. They forgot my 16th birthday because Logan Walker had a soccer tournament. Logan Walker was sick with a cold at the time, so they missed my college graduation. Logan Walker was always introduced first at family gatherings, and he was frequently mentioned. Always made me feel invisible. She acknowledged it all. Every instance I mentioned at the funeral, plus a dozen more, I had forgotten about. My father added a page at the end, shorter and more practical. But he admitted he failed me by never standing up when he should have. There was no request for money anywhere in the letter. There is no request, only 2 people finally accepting responsibility for their 33-year mistakes. I called my mother the next day, the first time in nearly 3 years. We spoke for nearly 4 hours. She cried. I did not. I told her exactly what those years were like. She listened without making excuses. That was new. 2 weeks later, they flew to Arizona. I picked them up from the airport. My mother hugged me and did not let go for a full minute. My father shook my hand, and then pulled me into a hug. This was the first time he had done it since I was about 13 years old. They stayed for 6 days. I met Claire Bennett properly. I immediately fell in love with Cooper. My father spent the entire afternoon throwing a tennis ball in the backyard, while Cooper ran himself ragged. My mother assisted Claire Bennett in selecting paint colors for the nursery. Normal family stuff, the kind I never imagined I'd have with them. On their final night, we sat on the back patio after dinner. My father cleared his throat and said, I have something to tell you. He stated that they had officially cut Logan Walker off completely. No more money, no more bailouts, no more paying his rent or covering up his mistakes. He claimed they should have done it 22 years ago, but they were too scared, and he couldn't handle it. He explained that seeing me walk away that Christmas made them realize they had been protecting the wrong son. Logan Walker did not take it well, according to my mother. He called them every name in the book, accused them of choosing me over him, and threatened never to speak with them again. They allowed him. They told him that if he wanted to return to their lives, he had to do so on his own terms as an adult, without expecting anything in return. Logan Walker was still working at that warehouse, living in a cramped apartment with a friend, bitter, and blaming everyone but himself, according to the last time I heard. Madison Reed dumped him 9 months ago after the money ran out. He tried to contact me once about 4 months ago. He asked if I could lend him $6,500 to start a new business. I did not react. Claire Bennett and I were married in April. Small ceremony for 60 people. My parents were sitting in the front row. My mother cried throughout the entire event. My father approached me afterward and told me how proud he was of me. This was the first time he had said those words to my face. Cooper was the ring bearer. Custom tuxedo, stole the show. Claire Bennett has approximately 280 photos of him on her phone from that day alone.